All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am Is There No One Else, and the video I'm bringing you today will be covering the 5.2.0 patch notes. They just got released about 20-30 minutes ago. I briefly read through them. Going to discuss some changes as I got it. Wanted to get a video out for you guys as quickly as possible. Looks like we're going to have a very long PTS, so going through some things. Huge changes overall as far as the overall combat, what combat's going to look like in PvP. Now, I'm going to say this now because I've gotten comments in the past. I only really cover PvP patch note changes, guys. You know, I go through gear sets, I go through PvP changes. I don't do enough PvE to really have a comment like, you know, if off balance duration is increased to 15 seconds, I can't really comment on, you know, how that impacts a trial situation. So I'm not going to do it. I'm going to skip it. I'm going to leave that to the people that know what they're talking about. And so if you're watching this and you're looking at trial and you know, dungeon stuff, just know I'm only going to discuss the gear and PvP balance changes, and you know, maybe go find somebody else covering those for you. So yeah, that being said, guys, let's dive into it. As I said, we're going to skip through some stuff. So we have a new zone, Southern Elsewhere. Season of the Dragon finale. New item sets. So they did a lot of reworks on things, and a lot of these sets look pretty cool. So in this update, there are 6 new item sets to obtain, 3 item sets that drop from the Southern Elsewhere, and 3 crafted sets. So the Overland sets. Marauder's Haste. Magicka Recovery, Max Magicka, Magicka Recovery, 2, 3, 4 pieces solid. And then 5, when you cast a damage shield ability, increase your movement speed by 20% for 9 seconds. Now, currently, guys, shields are kind of garbage. You know, shields aren't very good. But, you know, depending on how far they reduce the dots that they said they were going to reduce, damage shields could become a little bit more prominent again. This would be a very good back bar set for just about every Magicka class in the game. You know, having an increase in movement speed, and it's not giving you Expedition either, guys. This is just a 20% bonus, so it would stack with other forms of Expedition. So you could run this on your back bar or whichever bar you have your shield on, and you could have, you know, your Race Against Time that gives you your Expedition, and they would stack on top of each other, and you would be very fast on a Magicka tune. So we're going to be seeing potentially Speedy Magplars, Speedy Mag DKs, you know, Speedy everybody. That's actually a really cool idea. So I'm very interested in this set, and obviously I will go through the PTS, and we will cover these once the PTS comes live, like I always do. Dragon Guard Elite, 2-piece weapon crit, 3-piece weapon damage, 4-piece stamina recovery. Pretty interesting. 5, when you gain a stack of Dragon Guard Tactics for 5 seconds. Sorry, you gain a stack of Dragon Guard Tactics for 5 seconds when you deal direct damage to an enemy from the front or sides, up to 5 stacks. Each stack of Dragon Guard Tactics increase your weapon critical by 476. You can only gain 1 stack every 1 second. Okay, so that's what, 2,500 critical, roughly. It's interesting. Not that crit is bad in PvP. I mean, this could be a very nice front bar set. And obviously 2, 3, and 4 pieces is pretty solid. I don't know where this goes in line with like Sogviens and Leviathan and stuff like that. I guess we'll just have to look things over, but it's interesting. Then we have Central Defender, which is the heavy armor one. Max stamina, max health, max magicka, so very rounded out 2, 3, and 4 piece. 5 piece, dealing direct damage with a non-heavy attack. Grants you 1 persistent stack of Sentinel's Duty, up to 10 stacks, so we're just going with all the stacks today. After dealing damage with a fully charged heavy attack, restore 535 stamina and magicka for each stack of Sentinel's Duty and consume them. You can only gain 1 stack of Sentinel's Duty every 1 second. Okay. So this is interesting. I don't know how useful it's going to be. So you can get 5350 stamina and magicka. You know, after 10 seconds, if you do a fully charged heavy attack, you can have 10 stacks of these, and so you can get a pretty big return. It's kind of gimmicky. Well, I'm not saying it's bad. I mean, I guess I would have to like really try and reincorporate, like figure out where this would work out really well on. I mean, the first thing I think of is, you know, a Magicka Nightblade. You know, where your light attack rotating anyways, just to proc your Spectral Bow and everything. And so after 10 stacks, you could do a full heavy attack, with potentially a spec bow, get your resources back. Maybe you can go more damage that way. I'm not going to leave too much to it. This is just going to be something we have to test, but it seems kind of gimmicky, but I'm not saying it's bad. Then we have the crafted sets. Ancient Dragon Guard, max health, weapon and spell damage, weapon and spell critical. And 5-piece, gain 300 weapon and spell damage while health is over 50%. Gain 3460 bonus physical and spell resistance while health is 50% or less. So this is very interesting, guys. I guess what I'm curious about is, does it switch? Do you start off with 300 weapon and spell damage, and then when you drop below 50%, it switches to this? Or when you drop below 50%, do you have the weapon and spell damage plus the resistances? It's very interesting. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm saying that this is going to have to be tested. But if you get both of them, it's pretty solid. And honestly, it's still solid anyways if they switch. That's actually a decent amount of physical and spell resistance while the health is that low. Daring Corsair, stamina, magic recovery, weapon and spell crit. Reduce the cost of your weapon abilities by 10% magicka or stamina. After casting a weapon ability, gain minor heroism for 8 seconds, generating 1 ultimate every 1.5 seconds. While in combat, this effect can occur every 8 seconds. So 100% uptime on Daring Corsair for minor heroism. Once again, this is going to coincide very well. I mean, that's a ton of reduced cost, guys, for weapon abilities. So when you're looking at who could really utilize this, Stam Sorks, obviously, like the first thing that's going to come to mind for a lot of people will be Stamina Dragon Knights, because they use weapon abilities all the time. And having minor heroism for 8 seconds, happening every 8 seconds, builds into their sustain. So it's not a great damage set, obviously. It's recovery. It's more of like a utility set, but it's very interesting. And then finally, the best one, in my opinion, New Moon Acolyte. Weapon and spell crit, weapon and spell damage, physical and spell penetration, and then 5-piece adds 481 weapon and spell damage. Increase the cost of your active abilities by 5%. So, this is the highest crafted damage set. I mean, not only do we have a crit bonus, we have a weapon and spell damage modifier, plus we have pen right here, which is fantastic. And then almost 500 weapon and spell damage. At an increased cost. So, obviously it increased our cost by 5%. On a lot of builds, that's not going to matter too much. I mean, you can build in enough sustain. I don't think this is going to be too big of a deal, to be honest, guys. So, very, very interesting set. This is probably going to make it on a few builds of mine next patch. But once again, guys, it's crafted, so light, medium, or heavy. The 5% is nothing to scoff at. Like 5% is noticeable. I'm just saying that, I think you can work around 5%. That's all I'm trying to say. Collectibles, new motifs, new homes, base game, battlegrounds. So they updated the activity finder. It's supposed to work better now. I'm not going to go through it too much. You guys can go back and read it. This is already going to be a long enough video as it is. 3-piece item set updates, so more new changes. Part of our evaluation of older item sets revealed that our 3-piece item sets were underperforming. These sets were originally created for the purpose of adding more diversity in player builds without sacrificing power. They will now better fulfill their purpose by giving you the opportunity to run different types of gear combinations outside the popular 5-piece sets and a Monster Mask meta, and help reinforce the idea of play what you want. Play the way you want. I actually like this quite a bit. I think this makes a lot of sense. And now you can potentially wear Black Rose weapons, Master's weapons, VMA weapons with jewelry, and you don't feel like you're missing out in the same way you do now by not wearing 2 5-pieces. So, let's go through it. Agility, we knew what the old one was. Now it's 1752 magicka for the 2-piece and 206 weapon damage for the 3-piece. So, the nice bump in stats and weapon damage for agility. Potentates is very, very good, in my opinion. Reduce the damage taken from players by 5%, which is a lot. Like we talked about Buffer the Swift when it first came out and how 10% bonus is very nice. 5% is also very nice, especially for a 2-piece bonus, guys. Like even backbarring a sword and shield of Potentates on a class, giving you this much damage mitigation is pretty valuable. And then 3-piece, reduce the cost of ultimates by 15%. They increase reduced cost, Potentates is looking solid, guys. I'm not going to lie. Like, I think that's pretty sexy. So let's see how we can fit all this stuff, to be honest. Eagle Eye. The new one is weapon crit, and then 1829 weapon crit to direct ranged damage abilities. So snipe, poison injection, spectral bow. That's a lot of crit. That is a lot of crit. Not bad. I don't know if I'm going to use this because I don't normally play that type of playstyle, but that's not bad. Endurance, max health, and 618 health recovery. That is a shit ton of health recovery for a 3-piece. Like, that's a lot of health recovery. Grace of the Ancients, ton of max magicka for the 3-piece. So you got 3,400 max magicka for the 2 and 3-piece bonuses. Wow. And then Vengeance Leech, 2-piece max health, 3-piece when you kill an enemy, you heal for 2165 health and restore 2165 magicka and stamina. Wow. Okay. Willpower, same thing as agility. Wrath of the Imperium. Spell crit, and then 1829 spell crit to direct ranged damage abilities. Wow. Okay. So once again, Spectral Bow, Swallow Soul, Crystal Fragments, should be Flame Reach. So Sorks and Magic and Nightblade should be able to utilize this 3-piece set pretty well. That's very interesting. That's very, very interesting. That's a lot of crit, which is a lot of potential burst. Undaunted Celebration. Alliance War Camp. Once this update goes live, we will be opening a new Cyrodiil campaign. Lat Vulan is a 30-day CP-enabled non-alliance locked campaign. Additionally, we will be shutting down the Yolnacreen campaign. Anyone assigned to this campaign at shutdown will receive a free campaign reassignment. Okay. So, they're getting rid of the alliance-locked 30-day campaign, and they are now providing a 30-day non-alliance locked campaign. So that's very interesting. I think one of the no CP campaigns is still alliance locked, but yeah, that's a lot. That's a very big change. Pretty important for people like in less populated EU servers and everything. That's very nice to allow people to be able to actually play PvP sometimes. I'm not gonna lie, guys. It's been kind of frustrating even on Xbox. Like Xbox, I feel like has a bigger pop. Obviously, Xbox NA has a bigger population than Xbox EU, but my faction has been winning the campaign like the last 2 or 3 months. They're losing right now, which is, I'm sorry, but it's kind of nice. And the reason it is because there are a lot of bandwagon hoppers, and so when an alliance is winning, that faction hops on to PvP, and they like to steamroll and take maps. And that's always going to be the case. At first, I did like the idea of a locked campaign, thinking, now you have to PvP on your campaign. But the problem is like the 30-day campaign is too long. So after about 2 weeks when the score is basically decided, the losing campaign guys just kind of hop off PvP and they go do other stuff. And then the winning campaign just steamrolls the map. Because there's just a bunch of people that are like, oh yeah, I'll go PvP and I'll go 20v5 people. And it's not very fun when you're the winning campaign. It's not very fun when you're the losing campaign or the losing factions. You hop into PvP and you're just getting steamrolled all day. It's not very fun. You're going to hop off, At least now, if I hop out of the map and I see blue has it, I can hop on my yellow and go get some PvP and, maybe potentially help flip the map a little bit. If it's the other way around, I get to stick on my blues. So I like this. Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense. I'll leave that to be the way it is. PTS cycle includes a single template aptly named Dragonhold. Utilizing this template will create an 810 character located just outside of the city of Senchal. All right. Housing, miscellaneous, quest zones. All right. Combat and gameplay. Necromancer. Due to many of the current targeting issues with corpses and tether abilities, we are allowing Shocking Siphon and its morphs, as well as restoring tether in its morphs, to bypass the global cooldown. We are currently working on alternative methods to improve the targeting for these abilities, as well as improving the reliability of created corpses and their durations, but are not ready to implement them quite yet. We're aware of the frustrating nature of attempting to use these abilities, which is why we have added a small stopgap measure in the meantime until we can properly solve the issue. All right, Grave Grave Lord. Boneyard. Increase the base cost of this ability, its morphs to 49.50, up from 37.80, and decrease the damage per tick by approximately 33%. So, pretty big nerf to Boneyard. Frozen Colossus. This ability, its morphs will now only apply major vulnerability to enemies hit by the final smash rather than any enemy. This will reduce the total duration to 3 seconds, down from 5. Wow. A pretty big nerf to the vulnerability ult, which is honestly, guys, it's the most powerful ultimate in PvP. The Colossus ult is very, very powerful. The major vulnerability you get in group play, like you could just nuke people. Like well-timed ultimates with this ult just shits on people. And so the amount of damage that it does and the vulnerability uptime was just too high in my opinion. So getting rid of vulnerability until the final tick, you have time to get out of it now. I think this makes a lot of sense. Shocking Siphon, decrease the damage per tick of this ability and its morphs by approximately 33%. So a huge damage over time effect, reduced by 33% per tick. Skeletal Mage, decrease the damage per hit of this ability, its morphs by 50%. So another big nerf to attacks over time. Bone Goliath Transformation, fix an issue where activating the special bash attack from this morph will not turn your character to face the direction you cast it in. Alright. Housing, quests and zones, dungeons. Housing, quests and zones, quests and zones. Combat and abilities. General. In our continuing efforts to improve server performance, we have refactored how sprint functions on the back end and have made some changes to the design. On-foot sprint will largely function the same as it has in the past, though we've decreased the stamina cost of sprinting, which will result in being able to sprint longer. You'll also notice the stamina drain is more fluid in the UI. Like on-foot sprint, mounts will now stop sprinting when their stamina is fully drained. However, we've decreased the stamina cost of mounted sprint and greatly increased both base stamina and base recovery for mounts. Awesome. We will be closing monitoring how these changes affect your ability to traverse Tamriel and are open to feedback on your experiences. Alright? In efforts to improve performance, the visual effects from some player abilities have been updated. These changes focus on which players can see specific parts of a visual effect and when the visual effects should be removed from view. This is an ongoing process that will be maintained over time. Note that the caster of these abilities will not see much change, if any, while allies will see much less of the visual intensity. The following abilities have received adjustments: Radial Sweep and Morphs, Aurora Javelin, Puncturing Strikes and Morphs, Sun Shield and Morphs. Updated many of the more widely used champion point passives and nodes to be handled more efficiently on the server. Alright, this is an ongoing process and will be maintained when the champion point system receives adjustments in the future. Updated the tooltip text for all major and minor buffs and debuffs to describe what they actually do on the character UI. Awesome. Destroying a siege weapon will no longer proc item sets. Siege weapons continually rotate, fix an issue. Arrows will no longer blink in and out of existence as you bar swap. We will see. Stun abilities such as Ruin Prison or Petrify will no longer fail to stun targets that are not currently CC'd or CC immune. Alright. Adjusted many knockback abilities to send the target flying caster so they reach their end position sooner and can begin taking action sooner. Alright. Adjusted the standards from damage over time abilities to no longer deal approximately 2.5 times the damage of a traditional spammable attack, such as Force Shock, Lava Whip, and now will deal approximately 1.25 the damage over their duration. Specific changes will be listed in the skill line section. So, basically damage over time abilities will be halved. That's what they're saying. Instead of doing 2.5 times the amount of damage of a spammable, it's only 1.25 times. So, big nerf to dots. Area of effect damage over time abilities will now once again mirror the damage of their single target counterparts instead of dealing approximately 33% less damage. So that's a buff to AoE dots. To ensure they do not always beat out their single target counterpart, they will now cost approximately 66% more resources per second to maintain than their single target counterparts, up from 30%. Their standard durations have increased to 10 seconds from 8 seconds as well. So increase in damage, increase in cost. They're hoping that balances itself out. Healing over time abilities, both single target and area of effect, no longer adhere to the damage over time standards due to their limited application and accessibility. Yes. They have not received any adjustments this patch, but are being closely monitored. So obviously healing, guys, needs to be looked at because It got a huge buff last patch to counteract the dots, and so it's going to be interesting to see what healing does with the new dots. So hopefully we can get on PTS and test all this stuff out. Many morphs that change the behavior of their original parents, such as Eruption or Solar Barrage, are not fully adhered to some of these adjustments, such as power or cost, but have been kept within a range of power to ensure they do not wildly overperform compared to similar abilities. Okay, about halfway through, guys, about halfway through. Player source snares are now additive with movement speed rather than multiplicative. This will reduce the overall effectiveness of snares in PvP scenarios. Did you hear that, guys? This will reduce the overall effectiveness of snares in PvP scenarios. Thank you, ZeniMax. Thank you. We all want to move. Okay? I completely understand that moving too much kind of makes it really hard to kill people, but being snared to shit also sucks. So there's got to be this happy medium, and not being snared feels like a very happy medium, or not snared as hard. That's awesome. Auras from abilities such as Ebon Armory will no longer fall off for allies when bar swapping from an active 5-piece bonus via weapons. Excellent. Abilities and item sets that grant physical and spell resistances now grant an equal amount of both as a singular stat, armor, rather than two separate stats. Okay? Many item sets that granted X spell or physical resistance now grant 0.5x armor. This was done to ensure total power remains the same with less variance in these stats. Okay. I can get behind that. Passives that grant a unique source of 1 have not been adjusted. Major and Minor Resolve now grant an equal amount of physical and spell resistance, and Major and Minor Ward have been discontinued. Okay. Note that this has not yet happened to Fracture and Breach or forms of penetration. Okay. So that's another way the damage is going to go up a little bit. Buffs and debuffs. Diseased fixed an issue where the status effect was reporting that it applied Major Defile when it actually applied Minor Defile. Alright. Dragon Knight changes. They said that they were going to go through class changes. We're going to try and go through these as in-depth as possible. Fiery Breath. So Noxious Breath. The Morph, Stamina, and Magicka. This ability and its morphs now last 10 seconds at base, up from 8. So small buff to, how long it lasts. Increased the base cost to 35.10, up from 28.08. So 25% increase in cost, roughly, for, what is that? 25% increase in duration. So, okay. Reduce the damage per tick of the damage over time portion of this ability by approximately 47%. Engulfing Flames. This morph's bonus flame damage now scales off your spell damage. 1% for every 333 spell damage you have, up to a maximum of the original 10%. Now that's interesting. So Engulfing Flames obviously gives you 10% more flame damage. Now you need 3,333 spell damage in order to get the same 10% bonus. So this might not always be. This is definitely a nerf, right? Yeah. Yeah. So you need to make sure you have spell damage if you want to amplify this bonus. So before it was just 10%, more flame damage, and now it's it scales off your spell damage. That's interesting. So it just means you adjust your sets. Maybe you wear Burning Spellweave instead of, like Spinners or something like that, just so you can get your spell damage up where you want. Searing Strike. This ability and its morphs now last 10 seconds at base, up from 8. Once again, increase the cost to 29.70, up from 21.60. So pretty big spike in cost for an increase in duration. This ability and its morphs have gained the new functionality of immediately applying the respective status effect to the enemy upon cast. Wow. So, wow, really? I missed this the first time. Okay. So I'm instead of giving you guys 5 minutes of me quietly thinking this over, I'm gonna say what I'm thinking out loud, and I very well could be wrong. This is the first time I'm reading it because I missed it the first time. So you have Venomous Claw, and you have Burning Embers. Those are the two morphs. One does fire damage, and one does poison damage. So if you use Burning Embers, this is saying you apply the burning status effect to the enemy upon cast. So now, not only do they have the Burning Embers stack on them, they now have the Burning status effect. Same with Venomous Claw. So Venomous Claw will have that plus the Poison status effect, which is also a damage over time effect. On top of that, guys, in the Scalebreaker patch, DK's got a rework to their Combustion Passives. We talked about it a little bit, and I couldn't really show you exactly what it does, but basically, like when you proc the status effect, you could gain more recovery. And so now, not only is Burning Embers going to be a heal and a damage over time effect, it's a double damage over time effect that also builds into your sustain. That is interesting. That is very interesting. And then obviously reduce the damage per tick of the damage over time portion of the ability by approximately 60%. So they reduced the dot by a lot, but this offsets that quite a bit, in my opinion. Applying Burning status effect immediately upon application is a lot of pressure. That is a lot of pressure applied. Wow. And obviously they increase the cost, so you won't just be able to spam it, but that's very nice. Earth and Heart, Molten Weapons, this ability and its morphs now grant Major Brutality and Sorcery at base. Igneous Weapons, one of the morphs. This morph now increases the duration further to 42 seconds at rank 1, up from 32. It also increases the radius to 36 meters, up from 28 meters. Interesting. Okay. Stowed Fist. Reworked this ability to be a stamina-based spammable attack. Stam DKs now have a spammable, guys. It is a Stone Fist. It now deals physical damage, like it used to at launch, since it's a rock, with a reduced range of 15 meters down from 28. Alright, well, like I said, guys, when the PTS comes live, we will show Stone Fist in all of its new mighty glory. Increase the damage by approximately 66%, but no longer deals double damage if the target was stunned. Makes complete sense. This ability no longer stuns the target outright, but instead applies a stack of stagger to the enemy. After 5 stacks, the enemy will be stunned by the next Stone Fist cast at them, including from other Dragon Knights. If the target was stunned, all stacks of stagger are removed. Okay. They reduce the cost to $34.43. Stone Giant Morph. This morph no longer grants minor resolve after casting, but instead enhances the stagger mechanic, where enemies affected take 25 extra damage from any attack per stack. This effect cannot stack from multiple sources. Okay. Obsidian Shard Morph. This morph remains the healer-focused ability. Increase the healing by 3.3% since it was missing rank upon progression. This morph now deals fire damage instead of magic damage and heals 2 friendly targets up from 1. Okay. Interesting. Nightblade, Assassination, Teleport Strike, the Lotus Fan Morph. This morph now applies minor vulnerability to all enemies hit, rather than the original. Okay. This morph now applies minor vulnerability to all enemies hit, rather than the original. So, Teleport Strike was minor vulnerability. So are they saying Ambush no longer has minor vulnerability? Increase the duration to 10 seconds from 8. Decrease the damage per tick by approximately 47%. So they took... It looks like they took minor vulnerability from Stam Nightblades. That's what it looks like. And there's no explanation why they... okay. I will... If this is the case, I will make another video specifically talking about this, because this is a very big change. And once again, it's just one of those... Why can't Nightblades have anything sorts of things? Yeah, you're going to see it later, but basically, like... Okay, I'm sorry. This is where I'm going to go with this, and then you guys can feel free to tune in if this actually is. But Incapacitating Strike needed to be adjusted a while back. It was way too cheap. It did way too much damage. It was Major Defile, and it was a knockdown. It was a do-it-all ultimate. And so they properly adjusted it at first. And now the 120 bonus is garbage. Like, I'm still okay with it not defiling, but the 120 ultimate should be a knockdown, especially now that it has a cast time. Because the silence doesn't work for literally every class. Like, stamina-based classes, if you silence their magic, some of them aren't even going to notice. So it's just kind of pointless to have 120 bonus. If you're going to have 120, like, the ultimate at 120 ultimate should be better, not worse. And it's currently worse because you give free CC immunity to just about everybody, and it doesn't even really CC. So it's garbage. That's why the ultimate change is so bad. Not because it didn't need to be nerfed, because it did, in my opinion. It's because they nerfed it and they made the 120 ult bonus garbage. Now, they took Major Fracture from Surprise Attack, and the reasoning was, well, you know, we don't want a major buff on a spammable when you already have it on Piercing Mark. And it's like, well, why don't you have Piercing Mark provide something else and keep Major Fracture on Surprise Attack? Stamina Wardens have just about every fucking major buff in the game. They have major protection, they have major heroism, they have major mending, they have major fracture with their subterranean assault. How many major buffs do Wardens need at this point? You know, like I get it. Like some classes, you know, they don't really have, like, for whatever reason, like Sorks don't have a ton of major buffs and they're awesome. But typically when you provide a ton of major buffs to a class, you're basically making them very powerful. And I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not calling for a nerf to Wardens, guys. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying you have AoE major fracture on Subterranean Assault. Okay? You have major heroism. And then that can then turn into major protection. You have all of these things in the Warden toolkit, and they just don't want to give these major buffs in the same way to Nightblades. You know, it's tough to fit Mark on your bar. You know, it's tough to have some of these skills with buff on your bar. Like, if they had, you know, I'm not saying they should do that. Like, once again, guys, I'm not saying that they should do this, but it's kind of ridiculous that, you know, Wardens can have Berserk, you know, minor Berserk by their wings, and then that can give a major expedition. But Nightblades cannot. They just have damage mitigation now. But if you look at the major buffs that Wardens have, it's substantial, and that's what makes Stamina Wardens so powerful. And like I said, I have no problem with Stamina Wardens being powerful. All I'm saying is why do we keep taking away, like, minor vulnerability? Like, if this is the case and you take minor vulnerability away from ambush, why? Like, you should be providing some sort of description as to why you feel the need to take an 8% damage bonus when you already took away an 8% damage bonus, and then you also took away Fracture, and then you also, you know what I mean? And now we have cast times and we have Clunky Burst, and it just doesn't make much sense to me. That's all I'm trying to say. So maybe I don't need to do another video, but my point is like, it's just kind of mind-boggling if it's going to be Lotus Fan and not Ambush anymore. That has minor vulnerability. So this one now gives a dot that's reduced, obviously, but also minor vulnerability. But why run Ambush? You know, why would you run Ambush when you can run, at that point, Stampede? You know, if you're going to run a Gap Closer, why not run Stampede? Why not run Crit Rush? You know, it's a guaranteed critical strike at range that Gap closes anywhere. It does more damage. Like, why are we nerfing a Gap Closer that's not as good as other Gap Closers? You know? Shadow. Aspect of Terror fixed an issue where this ability and its morphs would fail to display the effects of animation canceled. Alright. Shadow Cloak. Shadow Disguise fixed an issue where the critical bonus from this ability could be consumed by abilities that could not critically strike. Summon Shade. Decrease the damage per hit of this ability in the Shadow Image Morph by approximately 42% per hit. Makes sense. They're reducing all dots. Fixed an issue where the attacks from this ability and its morphs were heavily desynced from their animations. Alright. Shadow Image Morph. The teleport for this morph is now 22 meters, down from 28. Since this morph is meant to operate on our Gap Closer or Creator Standard, this also prevents confusion in areas where the tooltip range would increase for the teleport, but fail to actually increase. Okay, we'll have to test this. Dark Shade, decrease the damage per hit of the Dark Shade morph by approximately 15%. Increase the radius of the area attack to 6 meters, up from 5 meters. The Shade will now use its area attack on a set timer, rather than having a chance per attack. Path of Darkness, Twisting Path, decrease the damage per tick of this morph by approximately 33%. Once again, nerf to dots. Cripple, decrease the damage per tick of this ability and its morphs by approximately 50%. So, my dot build just got its first big nerf, guys. I got a 50% reduced damage over time effect on my Crippling Grasp and my Debilitate. I will no longer be critting people for 3k per tick on this. It'll only be 1.5. Drain Power. This ability in Morphs now grants Major Brutality and Sorcery at base. Alright. Soul Tether. This Morph now also heals for half of the damage dealt upon an initial hit in order to help increase the defensive nature of the skill when you successfully cast it. Okay, so you get a burst heal and then you get a heal over time while it stays. Okay, so that's a nice little buff to survivability with Soul Tether. That should not go overlooked. I think that's a pretty big change. Sorcerer Daedric Summoning. Charge Lightning Synergy. Fix an issue where the synergy was not properly applying the Major Berserk to the Atronach it came from. Summon Unstable Familiar. Reduce the damage of this ability in its Morph's basic attack by approximately 17%. Increase the cost of the special activate of this ability in Volatile Familiar to 4,500, up from 2,808. Increase the duration of the special activate to 10 seconds, up from 8. The base cost of summoning these abilities has been streamlined to 3,510. Summon Unstable Clanfear Morph. This morph's damage now scales off your max stamina rather than magicka. So we have a stamina-based pet. Decrease the cost of the special activate to 4,500, down from 4,808. So small buff in cost, reduced cost. Area of Effect Tech now deals the same damage as the basic attack, but hits in a 6 meter radius, up from 5 meters. Fix an issue where the AoE attack would cause the Clanfear to reevaluate its purpose in life for 1 second after casting, lowering its potential DPS. Okay, that's interesting. Summon Winged Twilight. Increase the heal of this ability in the Twilight Matriarch Morph to be closer to the heal power of Rush Ceremony. This will result in approximately 87% increase for the base and approximately 55% increase for the Matriarch. Note that these abilities will continue to scale exclusively with Max Magicka. Alright, so once again guys, Pet Sork healing is back. They nerfed their shields quite a bit. They're bringing their heal back. So I honestly think this makes sense. You know, obviously I ragged on Pet Sorks pretty hard. Because it was justified. Like, they were very, very powerful and elsewhere. They're not very powerful anymore. You know, dots were chewing their shields alive. They reduced their shield size by quite a bit. Or they stayed roughly the same, but, you know, no longer affected by major protection with Pirate Skeleton. And damage over time effects were just shredding them alive. And now they reduced the damage that the Twilight now does. So, I'm okay. I'm more than okay with Sorks having powerful heals. It's just when it's heals, damage shields, and damage all in the same sort of thing, that's when it starts to get a little bad. So depending on how the shields are, I think having a buff for the healing makes sense. I guess it just depends on how much healing it's actually going to be. Storm Calling, Bolt Escape. The fatigue from this ability and its morphs now apply only if you successfully teleport 1 meter or more instead of whenever you activate the ability. This ability in the Ball of Lightning morph no longer stuns the target in a 4 meter radius from your origin location, but instead stuns targets in a 6 meter radius at your final location. Interesting. Fix an issue where you could become stuck. So that's going to be really hard to land the CC. Not really hard. Sorry. So going back to Ball of Lightning and Streak. So now when you streak, anybody that's on top of you or like right in front of you, when you streak, they all get CC. And so what this is saying, stuns targets in a 6 meter radius at your final location. So like when you land wherever you land in a 6 meter radius around there, everybody gets stunned. So it looks like it's going to be tough on paper potentially to land Streak as a CC. Not tough per se, but tougher. Interesting. Fix an issue where you could become stuck in place after attempting to cast this ability or any of its morphs when a target was outside your line of sight. Ball of Lightning. This morph now ranks up in duration, which now lasts 3 seconds to rank 4, up from 2. This morph now also adds 2 seconds of snare and immobilization immunity after teleporting. Wow. That is a big buff. That is a big buff in PvP for Sorks. Snare and immobilization immunity for 2 seconds after teleporting. Streak. This ability now creates a cone behind you after casting that damage and stuns enemies inside of it. The length is now 17 meters with a 40-degree arc rather than being a 4x15 meter rectangle. This means the ability will require more precise aiming when attempting to land on top of an enemy, but will require less precise aiming when attempting to cast near an enemy. Okay. That's a tough choice. We're going to have to go through these changes on the PTS, obviously, but snare and immobilization immunity is nice. But, you know, stuns with everybody in a cone behind you is also nice when you're trying to get away. We are going to have to look, obviously, and figure that out. Lightning Splash, increase the duration of this ability and its morphs to 10 seconds from 8. Increase the cost, $49.50 up from $30.24. So huge increased cost of Lightning Splash. Reduce the damage per tick by approximately 33%. Surge, this ability and its morphs now grant Major Brutality and Sorcery at base. So now Crit Surge can be used by Sorks. Excellent. Templar, Adric Spear, Piercing Javelin. Reduce the range from this ability and its morphs to 22 meters, down from 28. To ensure they follow the functions of other abilities such as Scatter Shot or Fiery Grip. These abilities will now ignore the target's physical or spell resistance to ensure they have a unique auxiliary effect. Okay. I mean, people were already Javelin spamming. And now that it's going to do more damage, they're just going to be Javelin spamming more. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how big of a buff this is, but this is kind of ridiculous. In my opinion, like on paper, this just looks a little ridiculous to me. I'm more than happy to be wrong, but I don't really have a problem with the Javelin so much as I have the problem with the CC animation that you get while you're on the ground. And people people love to spam CCs. And so this reduction of 22 meters is nice, but people just love to throw javelins or magnum shots or whatever at you to CC you over and over and over again. You know, it's the same. It's less of an issue of what Flame Clench used to be, where Flame Clench did a bunch of damage and knocked you down, and you were stuck on the ground and you were taking Sork Burst. This is still going to be kind of the same thing, because it's going to ignore the resistances, so they're going to do more damage with the CC. Puncturing Strikes, this ability and its morphs will now snare the nearest enemy hit by 40% every time it deals damage, rather than snaring the nearest enemy hit by 70% on the final hit. Okay. This ability and its morphs will now properly be considered direct damage attacks rather than a hybrid of direct damage and damage over time. Note that some item sets may still erroneously trigger from the attack and will be fixed in a future update. So this is a pretty big change for Puncturing Strikes. No longer have to stack into Thom. Updated the visual effects of this ability to better sync up with its attacks. Spear Shards. This ability and its morphs will now last 10 seconds, up from 8. Increase the base cost to $49.50, up from $30.24. Reduce the damage per tick of the damage over time portion of this ability, and the Luminous Shards morph by approximately 53%. Dawn's Wrath, Backlash. So this is Purifying Light and Power the Light. This ability and its morph's final explosion can now critically strike. Boom. Baby. Sorry. Boom. Baby. So, I have no problem. Like, I agree with this. Like, things should critically strike. Like, I'm okay with proc sets critically striking. Okay? I'm okay with Backlash critically striking. My problem with proc sets are that you can stack too many of them and it makes too much damage, so having a universal cooldown on all of them would be good. So that way, like, if you're wearing Celine's Viper, and Sheer Venom as an example, and you proc Sheer Venom, you have to then wait 10 seconds for Sheer Venom to end before you can proc another proc set. And so then all of a sudden, you do have a powerful proc set, but you can't stack multiple proc sets. And it can still crit. And so you can still have some burst damage with your proc set. I like that change more than what it currently is. The reason I'm saying that is I like that Backlash can crit and that you can have burst damage. With that being said, currently in Scalebreaker, Power of the Light and Purifying Light are hitting very, very hard because of all the free damage you're getting from dots. And I've talked a little bit about it on other videos, but I felt like Templars, in general, were actually in a very good spot in Elsewhere. In Elsewhere, I thought they were in a good spot. Magic Templar has always been the best group play class in the game because of what Breath of Life does. You know, you can You can use Breath of Life, you can heal yourself to full, you can heal another person, so you have so much support. And then you have an AoE spammable, and like you just be kind of tanky, you can keep your group alive. You just have so much support being a Magplar. And that's always been their strength. The problem this patch is they've given that same group strength, and then they've given everybody universal access to dots. And what happens with that on a Magplar, guys, is when you give them these dots with Purifying Light will stack and fill more often. It wasn't always easy to fill out the max value. And so you can now fill it more easily because of all the free damage you're getting. And that now means more burst. And so those of you guys getting shredded by Stamplars and Magplars, that's part of the reason is because of the increase in dot damage. So if this change was happening in Scalebreaker with dots the way they currently are, it would be very frustrating that they're buffing an already powerful burst thing. I think this makes a lot of sense, and with the reduction to dots, it'll still be nice burst, but it just won't be as much overpowering burst as it currently is. So just wanted to get that out of the way because I don't want people being mad at me for saying like, wow, Templar buffs. Like I honestly, guys, I don't think Scalebreaker should be a nerf to Templars. You know, we need to look at Bubble, which is coming up next, as you guys can read ahead. We need to look at Bubble. Bubble needs to be adjusted because the complete root when you're doing damage is bullshit. Like, the heal is fine. You know, they already have a snare with their puncturing sweeps. They already have a snare with their passives. Why do you also need to root people? You know, when you're trying to fight outnumbered and you're fighting multiple Magplars, you know, in a group, the problem is they're already the best group play class in the game. So, you know, if you go to hit somebody else that's not the Magplar, they're going to heal them to full with a couple of Breath of Lives. So then you focus the Magplar. And now they have a bubble on them that prevents you from attacking them, and then it roots you in place. So you're fighting outnumbered, rooted in place, which is basically death. Like, if you can't move, line of sight a little bit or whatever when you're severely outnumbered, you literally can't do anything. And I'm not saying like you should be able to kill people outnumbered. That's not what I'm trying to say. Like, you shouldn't. You know, good players, you know, 4 good players should beat 1 good player every single time. All I am saying is you shouldn't just completely eliminate a smaller scale group's ability to do something just by the fact that you cast a bubble on yourself, and then you can keep casting the bubble on yourself off of cooldown. I don't think that's right. So my point is Templars in general I thought were fine, and depending on how dots kind of line up, I think it makes sense. Like, these backlash changes I know are good, but we need to look at Eclipse, Living Dark, you know, Living Dark and Unstable Core. So let's look at Eclipse. Fix the issue where reapplying this ability or the Unstable Core morph to a target before the original expired could cause issues with the cooldown of the effects. Okay. Living Dark. This morph now only snares targets for 60% rather than immobilizing them. Keep in mind, guys, 60% snares are going to be less now. They're supposed to be less effective. So it will still be a snare, but it's not an immobilize. So this is an improvement. I don't know how big of an improvement this is based off of how they changed things. Like I said, you know, they made it a additive instead of multiplicative, so snare builds will no longer be as effective. At the end of the day, Templars now have just an amazing root kit in their toolkit. You know, through sweeps and through this skill, you can just have very powerful snares. And so I don't know why you need snares on a Magplar. Okay, at one point I understood. Okay, at one point Magplar was kind of in a very shitty spot. Their gap closer was very underwhelming. It didn't do a ton of damage. It, you know, it was tough to land because you had to be a certain distance away. And so it was nice to be able to potentially snare somebody because if they kept roll dodging away from you. I mean, if you guys played Magplar 2 years ago, you know what I'm talking about. It was really tough to deal with any sort of bow build on a Magplar because they would just get away. You know, you didn't have a powerful ultimate. You actually needed the snare so you could finish getting off your sets of sweeps. And so at that point, I understand. Now, though, now that you have off-balance toppling charge and it can hit at any point in time, now you can use it as a reliable CC. Like, I can be in front of somebody's face, and if they go offensive on me, I can topple and CC them. You know, that used to not work that way. And so you now have a reliable CC with Topple. Although it does not go through block, you do get off balance with it. And it's very fluid and very smooth. And so with these changes, with the changes to gear sets providing major X, or giving you bonuses to movement speed, with changes to race against time, last a couple patches ago giving you movement speed, you are no longer the slowest person on the battlefield as a Magplar. You can be as fast, just about as fast as anybody else. With that new gear change with the shield, plus race against time on your back bar, you're going to be one of the fastest guys out there. That's awesome. I have no problem with classes being fast and building into being fast. Being slowed down is very shitty. And so that's all I'm saying, guys. Like, I like these changes. I would like to see the snare eliminated completely. Keep the healing. You don't have to reduce the healing. Keep the healing exactly where it is. The healing is fine. You take damage, you get a little bit extra heal. It takes a long time to get, you could even, you cast it on yourself and you heal more when you take incoming damage. I don't have a problem with that. It's the snare and the immobilizing that just makes, it's a very shitty mechanic. It's a very poor mechanic to just snare somebody in place. And I'm saying that as somebody that's played it and knows how awful it is. It's not good. Unstable core. Reduce the initial and secondary damage dealt its ability by approximately 44% and the final hit by 25%. These attacks now happen in a 5-meter radius around the target, as the visuals insinuate. All right. Solar Barrage. Increase the duration to 8 seconds from 6. Decrease the damage per tick by approximately 30%. So Solar Barrage got another nerf in damage. Sunfire. This is Reflective Light and Vampire's Bane. Fixed an issue where the major prophecy from this ability and its morphs would only occur if you dealt damage rather than upon activation, as the tooltip states. Increase the base duration of this ability to 10 seconds up from 8. Increase the cost a little bit, and decrease the damage over time of these abilities by 60%. So this is a pretty substantial nerf to the Templar toolkit as far as their damage over time effects goes. 60% is rather large. Restoring Light, Cleansing Ritual, Ritual of Retribution. Reduce the damage per tick of this morph by approximately 33%. Okay. Restoring Focus, fix an issue where this ability was unable to cast while silenced. Shouldn't you, if you're silenced, is Restoring Focus a stam one? I think it's a stam one. So that would make sense if it's a stamina one, because silence level should only affect magic abilities. Rite of Passage, fix an issue where this ability could cause healthy sinks when used while taking heavy damage. All right. Animal Companions. Once again, guys, I don't want to. I really don't want to rag on Wardens, but this is kind of a ridiculous change to me. Betty Natch. This ability and its morphs now grant major brutality and sorcery at base, but the base ability no longer restores magic every second while active. So this is the base form. These abilities now remove 1 negative effect from you every 5 seconds. So Wardens now have a purge. Reduce the duration to 19 seconds from 22 seconds on the base of the ability. So roughly every 20 seconds, you're going to remove 4 negative effects. So it's not a huge purge. It's not a huge purify. But still, you already have an amazing healing toolkit with multiple. Okay, I need to separate this. I'm sorry. Magical Wardens need help. Okay, Magical Wardens absolutely need help. Stamina Wardens, I feel like, are in a very powerful spot. And so I don't think this is a huge deal changer either way. It's just one of those I would like to see an explanation, basically, why are we removing a negative effect? Is this, you know what I mean? Yeah. Blue Betty Netch. This morph reinstates the Magicka Restore functionality. Reduce the final duration to 25 seconds down from 27. Bull Netch. This morph reinstates the Stamina Restore. So if you want Magicka or Stamina Restore, you pick your choice. And then they reduce duration down to 25 seconds. While also, so each time these will remove 5 negative effects every 25 seconds. So it's not a big deal, guys. You're getting hit with so many purifies. And so many damage over time effects, so many negative effects, Siphon or passive, all these things. 5 every 25 seconds isn't a big deal. It's not huge by any means. It's a nice little bonus, is basically what I'm saying. Dive. This ability has received a new functionality to help it stand alone as a spammable, but has received some reductions to the base functionality that were in place to make up for the fact that it lacked any gameplay altering effects. Reduce the damage of these abilities by 10% and increase their base cost. Okay. If you are at least 12 meters from the target upon dealing damage with these abilities, you now set them off balance. Cutting Dive. This morph no longer reduces the cost of the ability beyond the standard stamina cost reduction and now applies a bleed to the target for 7 seconds if they are off balance, which can stack up to 7 times. Wow. That's very interesting. That is very interesting. We'll have to see how much the bleeds for, I guess. Swarm. Increase the cost of ability and morphs to 2970 to encapsulate their new functionalities. These abilities now apply minor vulnerability to the target for the duration of the dot. So Magicka gets into buff. They now have minor vulnerability. I think that's great. Decrease the damage per tick of dots by 50%. That's just universal for dots right now. Growing Swarm. This morph has been redesigned into a stamina-based ability that deals bleed damage. The swarm no longer spreads to nearby enemies upon completion, but instead deals damage to enemies in an area around the initial target. This damage is roughly 25% of the target's initial target's coefficient. Wow, that's a big change. So 2 changes to stamina morphs for wardens, and now wardens get minor vulnerability. I'm sorry, I'm really not trying to rag on wardens. I was trying to provide wardens as an example, and I missed this change as well. So, yes, so now wardens get minor vulnerability. Okay. Winter's Embrace, Arctic Wind. This ability and its morphs have regained the original function of Arctic Blast and deal frost damage in a 6-meter area around the caster while the heal over time persists. This damage scales with your max magic and spell damage to prevent compounded power for tank builds. Makes sense. Arctic Blast, this morph no longer converts the ability into an awkward projectile stun. Instead, this ability has inherited Permafrost's old functionality, where enemies hit 3 times in rapid succession with the ability are stunned. The stun cannot be blocked. Unblockable stun for wardens. Okay. So, you have an unblockable stun if you're on top of a warden. If you're hit with 3 times with this heal over time, with this frost damage, you will now have an unblockable stun. That's interesting. That's very interesting. 6-meter area around the caster. Okay, so this is what I'm going to say about wardens, and I promise you it's not going to be negative. It is kind of weird reading this, okay, that dive, you get off balance when they're over 12 meters away. So you get 10% more damage when they're over 12 meters away. That's fantastic. However, your CC only applies at 6 meters. And so I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying that it's really kind of clunky, If that makes it, it's going to be hard to synergize the two things, if that makes sense. So having off balance is great for a spammable at over 12 meters, and maybe it's going to do enough damage as it is. But then coinciding with the CC, yeah, that's kind of weird. So neither one of them are bad. It's just how they work together. And at the end of the day, guys, you want classes to have synergy. You want to be able to synergize abilities and effects in order to create burst or burst potential. And those two, currently, the way I'm reading it, are not lining up very well. And so that's too bad because, like I said, I think wardens need help. Like Magicka wardens need help. And so, although these are both helpful, it's not a great synergy. Crystallized Shield, Crystallized Slab. This morph now has a 500 millisecond internal cooldown on the damage to return and Magicka refund, similar to other abilities such as Dragonfire, Scalar, Living Dark. Grouping Shards. Decreased damage per tick of this morph by approximately 33%. Permafrost. This morph no longer stuns enemies who are hit multiple times by the effect, but instead increases the duration of the ability by 1 second per rank. All right, huge nerf for Wardens. Increase the snare potency to 20 to 70% up from 40. Each tick of damage now applies a chilled status effect to enemies hit. So chilled status effect is minor maim. So you have major protection and minor maim on Permafrost now. Guaranteed. Okay. Like I said, guys, I have no problem with Permafrost being... I think getting rid of the stun makes sense. There's a lot of damage reduction. So, I mean, it's not as powerful. The snare potential is great, especially for group play. We'll have to see what these snares do, because 70% could actually be 40%, you know, with how they changed. So I don't know exactly what that's going to do. But yeah, so they nerfed it in one way and then they buffed it in another. So I still think Permafrost is going to be very powerful for that reason. Two-handed Cleave. Reduce the damage per tick of this morph by approximately 60%. Critical charge. Stampede. Increase the duration of this morph to 10 seconds, up from 8, and reduce the damage per tick by approximately 42%. Stampede now leaves a dot on the ground. Momentum. Fix an issue where the animation of this ability would fail to display if you had a longer source of major brutality on your character. Alright. Reverse Slash. Fix an issue where the AoE damage of this ability could critically strike. Since the initial hit can already critically strike, this is effectively allowing this attack to double crit, contributing to a tremendous power spike. Okay. Uppercut. Reduce the damage dealt by this ability and its morphs by approximately 16%. To ensure it does not eclipse other damage abilities such as dots. Okay, so I do think D-Swing in Scalebreaker was actually a little bit too strong. I feel like it was hitting too hard, and having a hard-hitting spammable that also knocks people down, which is changing here in a minute, with the reduced cast time, kind of made it, especially in lag, made it like potential rapid-fire succession. And so I understand that, you know, if you're a shielded class, it was tough to deal with. Especially after you got hit with Onslaught, you could just rattle off D-swings. And so I think this makes sense to reduce the damage. I mean, you still are going to do more damage than you were in elsewhere because it's hitting faster. So I think this makes sense. I guess we'll have to see what it looks like, on the PTS once again, but this is a nerfed D-swing. And then Dizzying Swing, this morph no longer knocks the target back and stuns them, but instead sets them off balance for 7 seconds. So, D-Swing, you get off balance, and so once again, you can run the Truth set with D-Swing, which is pretty cool, So that 16% that you lost, you gain a lot of it back using D-Swing, but you no longer get the stun. So you have a hard-hitting ability that you can build into in your CP tree, which you already will. As a stamina class, you're going to have points to have the Exploiter passive, or to set people off, do 10% more damage when they're off balance. So you're not going to see a much change in overall damage to D-Swing. They're just essentially getting rid of the knockback. And at first I was against this. At first I was like, well, that's a huge nerf D-Swing, and it obviously is. But with dots being reduced the way they are, we may not have to build as defensively next patch as we currently do. And so we might be able to fit Turn Evil on our bar more consistently. So what we can do, guys, is sometimes D-Swing is awesome. Like if you go watch, I'm going to bring it up because I just watched his video a couple days ago, but Z-Dan has an amazing clip in the sewers where he was absolutely shitting on people in a Stamsork. It was amazing. And you just see this perfect combination where he lines up a D-Swing. D-Swing cracks for like 10 to 15k. He hits a guy with Onslaught. They drop over dead. And it's just fluid and fun to watch. Okay? The counter to that is there are times when you're fighting tanky individuals, the D-Swing doesn't... the CC that you get from D-Swing doesn't coincide your burst very well. And so maybe against some people, you want to hit them with D-Swing 2 or 3 times to chunk their health low enough to CC them and then hit them with your ultimate. Whereas, once it comes off cooldown, if you CC'd them, you would feel like you were forced to activate your ultimate after the CC because they were going to heal back to full, and you weren't getting your proper burst combination down. Now, it didn't happen to everybody, obviously. Obviously, like, he was playing against, people trying out sewers for the first time, and it looked glorious. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was very jealous that I wasn't wearing his build in the sewers. But there is instances with D-Swing where, especially like one of my buddies plays Stamp Sword. And so when we were fighting a group one time, we were trying to line up burst on one person because they had 2 healers in the group. And we were trying to take them out because they were the highest burst class. And his D-Swing was honestly interrupting our ability to get a timed burst combo off because we were trying to wait for him to get to half health to drop our ultimates. And he was basically CCing him off cooldown. And so we couldn't time our ultimates properly because our CC wasn't landing properly. And so for as big of a nerf as this is, and it is a nerf, it is going to be more reliable to use something like Turn Evil as a CC and use Dizzying Swing to get your damage, get him to a certain point, Turn Evil, ultimate. So it's just going to be, once again, fitting it on your bar. And bar space has been kind of limited on a lot of classes. And so I'm not saying that this is the way it's going to be, but with the dot reduction the way it is, we should potentially be able to fit D-Swing on our bar, or Turn Evil on our bar a little bit more easily, I think, or I hope. And with the snare reduction, maybe we don't need a snare removal skill because maybe we can get our heal. We're going to try and fit Turn Evil on our bar, essentially, if we're using D-Swing. One-handed shield, puncture, ransack, fix an issue where the minor protection granted from this ability was additive rather than multiplicative. Dual wield, flurry, reduce the damage dealt by this ability and Morph by approximately 8% to ensure it does not eclipse other damage abilities such as dots. Bloodthirst, fix an issue where the heal from this ability was not properly increasing by 1% of the damage dealt per rank. Twin slashes, decrease the damage per tick of this ability and its Morph's damage over time by approximately 63%. Blood Craze, reduce the healing per tick of this Morph by approximately 20% to ensure it heals for a closer value to the damage it dealt. Blade Cloak, increase the base duration of this ability and its Morphs to 10 seconds up from 8. Okay. Increase the base cost. Huge increase in cost of Blade Cloak, so that's a nerf to Black Rose Dual Wield, which I think is much needed, in my opinion. Black Rose Dual Wield is very powerful. Even for the short duration, you could essentially spam it, when you're trying to get protection. This huge cost doesn't allow you to spam it, so I think that's very nice. Reduce the damage per tick by approximately 32%. Quick Cloak, this morph now also offers cost reduction, taking the base cost to $37.80. Okay. So now you have cost reduction for the ability, speed. Okay, so it's still an increase in cost. Like, I was using Quick Cloak anyways with Black Rose Dual Wield, so it's not a huge change. I actually kind of liked this 5k change, to be honest. Although it's a nerf to my Stamp Sword, I thought it made sense to do this. But yeah, you just get a reduced cost now with... Okay. Poison Arrow, decrease the damage per tick of this ability's Morphs by approximately 63%. Rapid Fire. Ballista, updated the tooltip of this ability to show its true range to prevent confusion in areas where you could increase your target your range, yet failed to actually increase the range of the ability. Alright. Draining Shot, this morph no longer knocks back targets hit, but instead reduces their movement speed by 60% for 3 seconds. Volley, increase the base cost of this ability and its morphs to 4,500 up from 2,808. Decrease the damage per tick of these abilities by approximately 17%. Tooltips now properly mention their true duration. Destruction Staff, Ancient Knowledge. Ancient Knowledge. Fix an issue where this passive was not properly working with pets, specific pets. Alright. Destructive Touch. Decrease the damage per tick of this ability and the destructive reach morph by approximately 63%. Wall of Elements. Increase the base duration to 10 seconds up from 8. Increase the base cost to $49.50 up from $30.24. Reduce the damage per ticks by approximately 32%. Soul Trap. This ability is morphs will no longer fill soul gems if the target affected was a target dummy or a critter. Fix an issue where the application of these abilities could not be dodged and where each tick of the damage could be dodged. Updated the visual effects to better line up with the animation of these abilities. Reduced the damage per tick of this ability and its morphs by 50%. So once again, guys, my Dot Blade got another nerf in damage over time effects. So now Debilitate and Soul Trap have been nerfed. Luckily, Entropy has not been changed yet, and so we still have a very powerful damage over time effect that we can dot people down with relentlessly, but we'll see. We'll see if they make any changes. Werewolf, Infectious Claws. This ability and its morphs now immediately apply the diseased status effect enemies hit and do disease damage rather than a hybrid of physical and disease damage. Wow. That's nice. That's actually really nice for werewolves. Decrease the damage per tick these abilities by approximately 60%. Okay, so you get a Defile. You get Minor Defile, but a reduced dot damage. Okay. Claws of Life. This morph now heals for 100% of the damage caused instead of 50%. Wow. This will still result in an overall reduction since the base damage has been reduced. Okay. Werewolf Transformation. Fixed many issues where this ability could persist without meeting the proper requirements. Werewolf Berserker. Decrease the damage per tick of the bleed applied for this morph by approximately 48%. More werewolf nerfs. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm just thinking about werewolves. Like I really haven't fought one in a while, to be honest. You know, they went through substantial nerfs already. I'm kind of surprised that they're still nerfing them. It's interesting. Fighters Guild Trap Beast. Reduce the damage per tick of this ability and its morphs by approximately 63%. Big nerf to Trap Beast. Mages Guild. Oh no, guys, they're going after Entropy. This ability and the structure Entropy morph no longer grant major sorcery. Okay. It didn't make any sense that it did. Decrease the damage dealt of all three versions of this ability by 50%. Reduce the base cost of these abilities to 2,700 from 2,970. Degeneration. This morph no longer grants magic back when hitting an enemy affected by the damage over time, but continues to grant major sorcery for its original duration. Okay, so you can get major sorcery from degen, but you can't get it from structured entropy. Okay. All right. Well, the big dots have all been nerfed now. Soul Trap, Entropy, you know, Burning Embers. Like every dot has gotten a big nerf. So Nerf Gate is no more once this patch drops, which is pretty nice. Scalding Rune reduced the damage per tick of this morph by approximately 60%. Sigic Order. Mend Wounds fixed many issues with the animation of the heavy attack of this ability and its morphs. You can no longer attempt to fail to heal the wildlife critters of Tamriel with the heavy attack from these abilities, for their frail bodies cannot handle the power you wield. This also fixed an issue where your character would erratically convulse when attempting to channel these abilities on a target you couldn't actually target. Alright, Spawn Broodlings fixed an issue where the spiders spawn the synergies and the other morphs would merely fade out of existence upon death rather than displaying their death animations and then fading out of existence. Trapping Webs, this ability and its morphs now last 10 seconds rather than 5. Okay. Fixed an issue where the synergies granted from these abilities were lasting longer than the ability that housed it. Salt, Warhorn, Cleanse. Support Cleanse. Reduce the healing per negative effect of this morph to 5% from 10%. Okay. Synergizer, this passive now displays a visual effect when triggered. Alright. Consumables. Lingering Health Potions. These affix on consumable potions will now last for similar durations compared to powerful affixes such as Expedition or Protection. A CP 150 potion will yield a 13-second base duration. So, Lingering Health Pots will no longer provide lingering health the entire duration. It's only for that set point in time. Pretty big nerf. Shield Play enchants. These enchantments no longer grant bash cost reduction. They are now called bracing enchantments rather than shield play. Potions that increase your physical or spell resistance no longer grant major resolve or ward, but instead grant a unique value of resistances. Okay? So now you can stack them to have higher resistance values. Interesting. I'm not going to go through all these guys because, you know, they're old sets. I'm going to go through the ones that I remember seeing. Most of them are like visual cues. Barkskin now, like, it has a visual effect on Barkskin. Battlefield Act has a fixed issue. Blood Moon, increase the light attack damage bonus of the set to 55% up from 30. Reduce the cooldown to 15 seconds. Alright. Fortified Brass is a huge nerf. Reduce the physical and spell resistance granted from the 5-piece bonus to 3460 from 5170. So 1700 resistance is taken away from Fortified Brass. Hide of the Werewolf. Now has a visual effect when it occurs. Mighty Chudin. Yep, stacking. Mighty Glacier, Ravager, 7th Legion. Fix an issue where the set would fail to apply if you had a longer source of a major or minor resolve buff on you. Excellent. Swarm Mother, Twilight Remedy, Arts and Animation, Audio, Crafting Economy, Housing, and that's it. So that's the end of the PTS 5.2.0 patch notes, guys. As always, I'm going to go through the gear set reviews. I am going to go through the changes that I find interesting. If you guys want to see anything in detail, please provide it in the section below. I do apologize for going on my mini rant about Nightblades. You know, sometimes when you just see a class constantly, like, it's the same thing as the Werewolf changes right now. The only thing is I'm not as annoyed about Werewolf because I don't play Werewolf. So I feel like Werewolves are going to be in the same spot I am, where they're like, okay, well, we already took all these nerfs and we're still overpowered. Like, why are you still reducing us when nobody's playing it because it's, you know, it's not as good as it used to be? That's kind of the same way I feel about Nightblade. And so, not understanding the changes, I really do wish they would go back to what they were doing the last 5 or 6 patch note reviews, where they're providing descriptions for all these changes. These are very substantial, though. Like, I'm saying that these are very nice notes, but on some of these changes, it would be nice to see developers' comments as to why they did what they did. So that's just my opinion. That's the end of this video. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.